I'm Martha Raddatz, ABC News Chief Global Affairs Correspondent, and I am joined today by documentary filmmaker Ken Burns. Welcome to you. Thanks for joining us. And because we believe all politics is social at this week, we're going to ask Ken some of the questions that you submitted on Facebook and Twitter. But before we get to those questions, Ken, tell us a little about your new film project, The Address, that will air on PBS in the spring, and why you are encouraging Americans to record themselves reciting the Gettysburg Address.
November 19th is the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's delivery of the most celebrated, perhaps greatest speech in all of American history, the Gettysburg Address, 4 months after the greatest battle ever that take place on American soil. I have been spending the last year making a film about a tiny school in rural Vermont that is a boarding school, a place of last resort for little boys who have been bullied and marginalized because of their learning differences, their ADD, their dyslexic, their dysgraphia, all this alphabet soup of problems. But each year they're challenged to memorize and then publicly recite, which is a terror for them, the Gettysburg Address. And they do it. They overcome things. And the school uses the Gettysburg Address as a kind of unifying thing, and has for the last 35 years. And a goal. And remember, Lincoln says it's a new birth of freedom. And when you see it played out 150 years later in the lives of these kids who really just transcend the limitations of their differences and really engage in something, as I was editing it and so moved, I just said, we need to challenge everyone. And I was able to get a lot of notables, including all the living presidents, to sort of read it. And we've mashed them up, and we have a website, learntheaddress.org, and Americans are contributing to it. A whole stadium recited it together, schools in Alabama and Utah, old 90-year-old people who've had it on their hard drive for a long time are doing it. And the idea that we could do something in unison. We like to sing in church. We love to sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game at a ballpark. We like to do things in unison, and yet we look at our political landscape and it's so fractured, it's so divided. And
Ken
we have people
Burns
from the far right to the far, there's too much pluribus and not enough unum. I'm about that, and I think that what the Gettysburg Address does is reminds us that history's a table around which we can still have a civil conversation. And unfortunately, 83% of college graduates today can't tell you the speech in which someone said government of the people, by the people, for the people. That means we have a lot of work to do to remind us why we agree to cohere. Otherwise, we won't be able to solve the problems up there on that hill.
That's a wonderful project, Ken. Now I'm going to go to the questions from our viewers, which I like very much. Eleanor Hooven, I would love to know what makes him choose a particular topic to create a documentary.
You know, it's funny. The quick answer is they choose me. I could spend 1,000 years and not run out of topics in American history. I'm a little bit parochial and provincial, and that is all the stuff I do is in American history, but it has to be a good story. I'm not trying to ram an idea down people's stuff.
Do you feel that you will ever make a documentary film on a more recent subject matter? I suppose
we
cancer
have our
and country music.
Well, the last film that we did, and country music goes back a century. You know, the last film we did was called the Central Park Five, that I made with my daughter and my son-in-law, both longtime collaborators, and it was about the 5 black and Hispanic boys falsely accused and imprisoned, and finally, after they'd gotten out of a prison, exonerated and still in a kind of legal limbo as they wait for a very long trial or a civil suit to work its way through the courts. That's a very contemporary story that touches on issues of race that is part of the American narrative back to Thomas Jefferson.
But no films on the government shutdown.
Not yet. We'll get to that. But we like to have 20 or 25 years to triangulate that.
That was a great question from Kyle Wade. Now we have one from Rob Winder. Do you feel we are a historically illiterate nation? If so, what are the consequences and possible remedies?
We are a young country, and we are essentially historically illiterate, and the only way you get better and go forward is to know where you've been. It's absolutely critical. Okay,
and now we go to the lightning round. Favorite film?
I like The Seventh Samurai by Akira Kurosawa. It's sort of a Japanese Western from the 1950s, and I've never seen a better film.
If you could interview one person in history, who would it be?
Abraham Lincoln.
I knew you were going to say that. That's an easy one. One piece of advice for young filmmakers.
You know, for young, I think there's... If you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an Indian chief, I know what the course is. But if you want to be a documentary filmmaker particularly, you have to know who you are. That is to say, actually, at some point, maybe say, you know what, I don't have something to say. So be true to yourself. That you need to have a voice. You need to have something to say. Not just editorially, but you need to know that you want to say something. And more important, you need to have perseverance, because nothing's going to be handed to you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ken. We really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who submitted their questions. Be sure to follow This Week on Twitter at This Week ABC, and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/thisweekabc. Have a great day.